So let's start with the slowdown of the Chinese economy. According to President Trump, much of the slowdown is due to the trade war he's waging with China. How would you assess the validity of that statement?
Trump is a loser who who disguises his losses by declaring victory. Well, I think the North Korea portfolio is a good example of that, where Trump has totally been defeated and tricked and outrun and outsmarted by Kim Jong-un. And Trump has dealt with this by declaring victory. And the trade war is another one where Trump started out saying we're going to fundamentally change the Chinese economy and make everything fair and open the economy to our businesses and stop the Chinese from favoring state-owned enterprises and stop them from trying to not only steal our technology, but even stop them from competing with us in the area of technology. And instead he settles now for this so-called interim agreement. It's a big defeat for him, and the interim agreement itself is in any case not real. It hasn't happened, and if it does happen, it will simply be a promise by the Chinese to buy a lot of soybeans, which they don't have to actually implement. So it's just hot air. It's a lie. It's fiction, and it shows that the Chinese have not, in fact, yielded on the key things that the trade war was supposed to achieve, because they said at the beginning that they wouldn't do that, and they haven't done it. The damage of the trade war to Trump politically with the farmers in the Middle West and so forth is substantial, but the damage to the Chinese economy, it's not that it doesn't cause any damage at all, but it isn't really crucial damage to the Chinese economy because their exports to the world have not gone down very much.
I see, but is a trade deal or partial trade deal or phase one trade deal going to be sufficient for Trump to secure enough votes to land an election victory in 2020?
Well, breaking that up into two pieces, will the farmers be fooled by this? I doubt it, because by the time the election comes around, they're going to look at how many soybeans they're actually selling. And then on the other question about whether the farm vote, whatever it is going to determine the election, I just can't say. The election is so unpredictable. I don't know. But I mean, I don't think the farmers themselves will be faked out by a false, just by an announcement of a victory. They're going to look at their actual soybean exports.
So I agree that Trump is flaky. He changes from day one to day two. He goes back and forth on a lot of things. But is it a fair statement that we do see an increasingly hawkish approach on China, in Congress and in the National Security Branch and also in Pentagon? And how important is that?
Yeah, so Trump is, as you say, he's kind of back and forth. He lacks consistency in his China strategy. But I think there is a very real, deep shift in the American political system as a whole, in the Congress, in the administration, in the security branches, in public opinion, in the think tanks, very widespread shift in American attitudes toward China that we do need to take seriously. And I think it is two things. One is China has become much wealthier and using its money to build up its navy and to take a more assertive posture in the South China Sea and around the Senkaku Islands and in the Western Pacific, and using its money to extend its economic and diplomatic influence through the Belt and Road Initiative and other things. And so in short, China has become a great power, and it's exercising more military, economic, and diplomatic power everywhere. And that has changed the balance of power with the United States, and it has scared the United States. So that's one thing. And then a more sort of superficial or symbolic thing is, I don't want to call it superficial, but something which is more in the realm of ideology, let's say, is the Xi Jinping regime. It's crackdown, what you talked about before. That doesn't directly impact the United States so much like the military and economic influence, but it also is very scary for us. We don't like what we see in Xinjiang or in Chinese universities and on the Chinese internet and the social credit system and censorship. And it even does impact us somewhat because you have the, NBA controversy and Chinese influence over Hollywood and Chinese influence over American academic institutions and stuff like that. So it's not only happening in China, but to some extent, it's also extending Chinese censorship over to us. So these two things, like the hard power thing and the ideology thing, are really, really making the American political system in all of its aspects, whether it's public opinion or Congress or the security agencies, taking another look at China as really some kind of threat. It's very fundamental. And then on top of that, you have Trump, who, as you say, is sort of flaky. So he doesn't give a clear answer to this question, but everybody else does see China as a big threat.
I see. So, I agree that, Trump is loud and boastful, but should we at least give this administration some credit for calling out on China's bad behavior?
No. Yeah, okay. I guess so. I mean, you have Pence, for example, giving these very, very tough speeches on China. The State Department has issued some statements on the Xinjiang issue.
Right.
I mean, you're saying, should we give them credit? I don't know that I would put it quite that way. I mean, it's a fact that the U.S. political system in various levels is reacting against China. But I think the question is, what's really useful? Does the administration, does Pence or Pompeo or anybody else have a strategy for dealing with China? And I don't think they have a strategy. They can give these speeches, but what good does that do? So I don't want to give them too much credit. I think we need a strategy. The so-called free and open Indo-Pacific is not really a strategy. The United States, because there's no money in it, it doesn't amount to anything. The other partners don't really trust the United States. The trade war is not a strategy for dealing with China, in my opinion. Doesn't make any difference. Picking a fight with Japan over trade at this particular time and making the kind of statements that Trump has made about our alliances, that they're cheating us, those are not strategies for dealing with China. They're stupid. Canceling the TPP is stupid. So at this present time, the administration has, talks about China, but is not doing anything. We don't have a strategy in Africa or in Latin America to compete with Chinese influence.
Great. So, if you were to advise your favorite presidential candidate on China, what kind of a China strategy will you come up with?
Yeah. So if you read, say, a journal like Foreign Affairs, where many people talk about the issue of China, even if they're writing about Europe or Africa or South America, they always mention China because China has now become a global challenge. What I would say is nothing original with me, but is what everybody says. So the first China strategy is to invest in our own system at home. We have to be competitive. We have to invest in education and scientific development. We have to invest in cybersecurity. It's stupid to complain that the Chinese are stealing our secrets. We have to protect our own secrets. You're not going to convince the other guy to stop, hacking into your computer system. So we have to be competitive. Then secondly, we need to invest more money in Africa and Latin America and Southeast Asia, like China does. They have the Belt and Road and we have nothing. Mm-hmm. And that requires a reform of our tax system because we're running a gigantic fiscal deficit in the United States, and that's why we can't afford to compete. Then I think third is the alliances. Our alliance with Japan, our alliance with NATO, our alliance with South Korea. You have to be a reliable ally and stop wrecking those alliances. And then the third thing is to use trade treaties, not the way Trump uses them, but the way that the TPP was designed, which is to create a trade order that respects human rights and respects the environment and so on, mm-hmm. and set it up and then invite the Chinese to join in that trade order. So those would be the four things everybody says, it seems to me, that all the people that I read. And I would certainly continue with engagement, the part of engagement which involves academic exchanges, Chinese students coming to the United States, human rights dialogues, criticizing China on human rights, keep the ideological struggle alive. But of course, the disorder in our own political system is bad for that. Mm-hmm.